what we want to share with you today, which is the challenges globally that collaborators between startups and corporates are reporting about their own collaborations, as well as the success factors that really high-performing collaborators like Generali House of Insurtech have to share to enable other collaborators to improve their own approach. Starting off just with some quick background about myself and Matchmaker Ventures, why we care, why we conducted this study. Matchmaker Ventures has been playing a hands-on role in startup corporate collaborations since 2015. And in that process, we work with a portfolio of thoroughly validated scale-ups, rather later stage startups, and bring them to corporate partners with relevant opportunities in the telecommunications and banking space. And throughout our engagements in this ecosystem, of course, we have been to wonder what could be done to make this better, because of course we encounter throughout our own collaborations different challenges, and we are also devoted to making sure that this ecosystem as a whole is improving over time, and we are wanting to support startups and scale-ups as well as corporates, even if we're not working directly with them. So to that end, we've been conducting different research into this topic since 2015, starting with our first Age of Collaboration report, all the way up to December of last year when we issued our third Age of Collaboration report. And over time, we've seen this ecosystem really thrive and grow. So at the time of our first report in 2016, it was still kind of an open question. And as you all probably know by now, of course, it's not an open question anymore. If you're not doing open innovation, you'll be left behind. So by 2022, what we found is, in fact, these collaborations are really here to stay. And not only that, if you can get them right, they deliver really significant business impact, hence the title, It's Bigger Than You Think. And to gather these insights, we asked nearly 800 respondents, including Ruth, who is here with us today, about how their collaborations are working, what's going right, what's going wrong, what their approach looks like. And it was a very global view, so we're excited to share with you that CorpUp is really taking over the world. We had 85 countries taking part in this report and sharing their perspectives, not only in the survey, but through deep dive interviews. And there's a lot of meat there. I encourage you, if you want to read it, go ahead. But of course, we have limited time here, so I wanted to focus on mostly the topic of what challenges overall stood out from the collaboration ecosystem at large, and what's at stake to get it right, and how can you get it right in your own collaborations, of course, with the perspectives of Ruth and with your own perspectives to share with one another while we're here today. Having already addressed this, I jump into just maybe what you all already know anecdotally, which is we know for sure that these collaborations are growing. There are more of them with each passing day. Starting in 2016, very few corporates comparatively would report to us that they were very or extremely experienced at these collaborations. And by the end of 2022, we saw that this number had risen significantly. So it's a maturing ecosystem, even if you feel in your own collaborations that things are challenging and things aren't working the way you want to. There's good news. It's growing. It is getting better. You have a deeper level of experience. And even if you are new to these collaborations, your ecosystem around you has experience that you can leverage through insights like this report and through communities like Innov8rs, luckily. And specifically, CorpUp itself is here to stay, we found. So CorpUp referring, in fact, here to not investment or acquisition, but collaboration on business terms, which we at Matchmaker Ventures would define as rather a buyer-supplier relationship. So a startup serving as the vendor to a corporate, as you might work with another corporate to purchase a solution or a technology from them. But of course, these collaborations are not just a walk in the park. Although we see that they're very active, they're getting more mature. In fact, it takes a lot of work. And as such, the corporates who are engaging in these collaborations have reported to us that there are a number of challenges that they face here, including finding the right partners, convincing their organization, finding the business owner internally. Maybe you can relate to some of these yourself, as well as scaling and a few others. So here I want to actually maybe first turn to Ruth to share your own perspective on these challenges from your own collaborations at Generali, and then maybe we can have the audience share their own view as well.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Rebecca and Scott, for the introductions and also for setting the frame here on what CorpUp and what corporate collaborations with the startups mean. I'm really great to be here and honored as well. I mean, I see 316 corporate interviews that you had, and I'm really glad that you reached out and invited me also to be part of this roundtable. I think, and also maybe like briefly, right? So the focus, the core of our work that we're doing, we're a core pub studio from Generali insurance company. And so we're so much really like into this interface of startup and corporate collaborations. I would say that, like probably, and I see that, Rebecca, you've been doing this report since 2015. I'm very much focused on Core Pub since 2017, where I was working with an external accelerator, a multi-corporate accelerator, and now 3 years with HITS, the House of Insurtech Switzerland. And I have to say it's really great to see the evolution. I totally agree in terms of the vehicle, so how important and relevant it is. Yet it's not an easy easy job. And I think what you highlight here with the report and the opportunities that are still to be uncovered and really further scaled. I would say that probably for the next reports that maybe you will be publishing, I would just kind of transition from the age of collaboration towards the age of value creation, because I think that that's really like the space where I feel that we are right now. So especially from the corporate, and we need to see what's the challenging environment currently, like all the macroeconomics and the forces that are out there, how challenging it is for startups. But also for corporates working with in this innovation space, how the market influence, like the macro is influencing as well, like the need to really justify and create value. And I think that is as well, like if you see, I think later on in the Innov8rs, there are a couple of other sessions that I'll be looking to join, because there is a lot about measuring this impact and measuring the value that we're creating. So I would say, like from the 3 points that you're highlighting here, I think and also taking into consideration, we're already like quite, we're very focused on the core pub space and collaborations. We're really there since a while. And I'd say that we've matured. Like at the beginning, it is indeed finding the right startups because, there is actually a very dynamic space. And it's, of course, like, it's a risky move, right? To really like select the one that it's most relevant. Right now, we've established ourselves more into, partnering, reaching out to outposts, and having like the, also the capabilities internally on how to scout and how to really do this matchmaking. I would say for us at this moment, it's I would emphasize on the topic of scaling the collaboration, and once more making this strong point on how to create value. I think the innovation, it's producing the value once it's commercialized, and so even for a startup, just doing a POC, it's only the start of the collaboration. But I think bringing it to market and identifying which are really like the key unfair assets, like the unfair advantage that we're having by collaborating, this is the critical piece. And so I like to highlight maybe at this point of time as well, the points, the second and third point, right? Like more internally driven in business, finding and aligning with the organization, very critical. Also like quite challenging, depending on the size of the organization. We're working here internationally with lots of colleagues from the group. We have a strong foothold here in Switzerland, but also in the DACH region and now group. So it's really challenging to navigate, and we know and have our connections, but I can't hardly imagine for a startup trying to really navigate through that. And I would like to say as well, I mean, I recently read a book, this Gorillas Can Dance, and I think there was also like some presentation here in Innov8rs from Shamin Prashantan. And this is talking about the asymmetry. So why those challenges exist. And one of these challenges is like the asymmetric goals that we're having, corporates and startups. The second one is on structure. So this point on, who to talk to and how do we take decisions, where are the budgets, etc. And the third one is on attention. And I felt really like it resonated a lot. And this, I think that it's really like very well, profile here in the picture with convincing and aligning the organization and finding the right business. I think that those are really like, it speaks with those asymmetric way that we are operating.
That makes so much sense, Ruth, especially this point about the age of value creation and these internal challenges that you run into in such a large organization. At least in our view and in our experience, what gets the organization on the same page is dollar signs. If you can prove this collaboration has business impact at stake, and you have paid attention to the impact it will create, also on non-financial dimensions, which we'll explore later, then you can really streamline and support your own efforts to get the organization to be convinced to work together. And then you know whose KPIs are being impacted, so potentially supports your ability to find the right business owner internally as well. And if you measure the impact, you can also articulate your goals for the collaboration. So this asymmetry you highlight, if you understand you might have different goals than the startup and the collaboration, the first step is to say, what are my goals here? And to try to set up, what is the impact I'm chasing here? And come at it from that angle where you can communicate your goals because you actually understand what you're shooting for here and what you're aiming to achieve, what impact you can expect, which takes a lot of work. I think you've told me in the past about the very, very intense work being done at Generali for the value framework that you're working through to account for this impact. And I know that it doesn't come easily, for sure.
Indeed. I don't know if we want to open up also. I'm interested in hearing as well from the rest of participants.
Yeah, has anyone in the audience, would anyone like to share any challenges that they've faced, possibly more than once?
Hi, this is Johannes here from Red Bull Soccer. We are also collaborating more or less intensely with startups regarding sports innovation from sports perspective, but also the commercial side. And what I find particularly difficult is to find the right balance between formalized collaboration in terms of writing contracts and all those sometimes painful things, and working together openly and collaboratively. And what's difficult for us is to find the right balance there. Maybe you guys have some insights that you can share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe if I can say, like, this is probably also touching on the last point here in the slide, right? Mastering the procurement process. Like when you start formalizing, I think there are a lot of requirements. I mean, in insurance, we're a regulated company, like in a regulated industry. So there are a lot of steps to really kind of check and make sure that are in place in terms of, the supply requirements. So what we came up with is a fast track procurement process for startups. And so we start kind of small collaborations, we test, we POC with them, and we evolve. I think for most of the work that we do with the House of Insurtech, it's been formalized, but of course there is a lot of pipeline. So until we get to the point that it's been prioritized for a formalized relationship, it takes quite a lot of time. And this is also something, this is a reality, and I'm hearing from you, Johannes. I mean, I can imagine Red Bull to be also quite radical on the way you guys collaborate with startups. But there is really there is a lot of work that happens before. And then the informal collaborations, I think that it's more about culture and how you're really setting up, this how to approach. And if you have like a team to specifically develop those partnerships or develop even events, which I know that you do. So I think that those are these interactions that are also creating value, because indeed dollars, but also there are some other elements that we believe that are part of the value equation. Mm-hmm. So the first one is the visibility that you create, the innovation association, really making people aware internally and externally. And then also the whole way to mobilize organization, this engagement, and the how you bring talent into those corporations. Those are also very important pieces of the puzzle.
Maybe I can rephrase the question also a bit. Maybe it wasn't 100% clear. So imagine a scenario where we want to partner with a startup. So we see this is a highly promising technology. We want to use it in the future, but we also see that we have to put in a considerable input from our side, like a typical innovation or co-creation partnership. And the question always arises, do you or can you manage everything within the contractual framework? Probably not, and most of the time it doesn't work, to be fair, because it's so dynamic, and you have to share more usually that you can define in a contract. Or do you collaborate really openly and based on trust and communication? And usually the second model works better. But you get into uncomfortable situations as well, because like I said, you have to share a lot of your assets and your knowledge, expertise, and you more or less have to trust it to get something in return in the long run. You know what I mean?
That's an excellent point. I think especially on trust, Johannes, this is something that we found in our deep dive explorations with the participants, is that what it really takes is trust and a warm connection to really understand that this is a partner. It's not just some vendor approaching you, that this is a team that you can rely on, that you can really believe in the solution and their ability to deliver. So this is a key component, I think, the trust that you've highlighted. But I also want to echo a little bit what Ruth was, I think, getting at, which is that this is part of actually the beauty of CorpUp, is that you, as a large organization, I don't want to say you would be addicted to a good process, but you would really stick to and love a very strict, controlled process generally, not you, Johannes, specifically. But in our own experience, we see that these processes can be very rigorously defined, and definitely from a very corporate perspective. And when you work with a startup, you kind of have to start to think like a startup and invent these more agile solutions and workarounds to make the work that you want to do with them possible. And your teams are exposed to a different mindset. Your processes are a bit questioned. Why was it necessary that we do this in the first place if we now need to work around it to get this solution or get this partnership up and running, and to really question what is the purpose of the processes? How can the organization benefit more from working and thinking like a startup? So it's part of the non-financial intangible benefits. At least we see at Matchmaker Ventures, and if I hear Ruth correctly, I think they see at Generali, of these collaborations, is this the need to work in a more agile way and the trigger to do so for your teams.
Thanks,
Right.
much appreciated.
Right. Also, sorry.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Maybe to add to that, because I think I think it needs to be the trust needs to be developed, but I think it needs to be fair from both sides. I've seen also a lot of work from like we're asking the startups to be participating in different type of events and to really kind of pitch once and again and again. And I think that that's also something that we're very aware when those collaborations are establishing. It needs to create value for both of us, also for the startups. And so some of the times it needs to be also remunerated. And so this is like when it's it's just like yes, I think the basis of just kind of lose touch and really like let's make the things happen, but it needs to be fair as well from the startup perspective.
Absolutely. This is, I think, if anyone's interested to see more about the startup perspective, of course, knowing the audience, we've taken a focus more on the corporate side, but we have some strong advice for the startup collaborators based on our findings to really take themselves as a serious partner in these collaborations and be willing to look for benefit for their own side as well, and know what they want out of it. Same as a corporate should come with an impact they're seeking, they should also come with clear goals and be willing to ask for those goals in the collaboration. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to take a look into the full report. What I can note on this procurement process point, just coming back to what Ruth said, because it's not here, but although it's the relatively low on the list, I mean, it's the lowest tier that you see as a challenge, we compared the success of corporate collaborators against how likely they were or whether or not they had a dedicated procurement process. And what we found was, in fact, that corporates who reported that they did have a dedicated procurement process were more than twice as likely to report that they had very or extremely successful collaborations than those who had no dedicated process. So these dedicated approaches that are focused on working with a different kind of partner at the end of the day can really play a big role. And we have some more information about that later on in this presentation.
No system is perfect, but it's good to have a system, right?
And be willing to break it if you need to, as Johannes seems to be experiencing.
Yes. Maz had a question about finding the right partner and how that happens. Maz, did you want to come on and ask that question?
Yeah. So I was just interested in maybe some of the root causes or patterns, perhaps, of what lies underneath this challenge, finding the right startup collaboration partner. And the reason I'm asking this question is that sometimes local ecosystems kind of stand in the way of global ecosystems, and maybe you can find startups in your region, but in all likelihood, scouting is a global endeavor. And so is this a maturity issue? Is it related to like you're falling in love with a startup too early, or what are some of the reasons that finding the right? I mean, because this is, I guess, a risky decision if you get it wrong.
I'm so glad you asked this, Mas, because even the very next slide can show you a little bit of the information we found from corporates about what are they looking for that could contribute to why it's so hard to find for them. And we asked them, what are the factors that you consider, or what criteria do you look for and consider highly or just regular level of importance for you versus only somewhat slightly not at all. So this is the factors according to how frequently they were listed as highly or important here. And the top three factors, I think what makes it so hard to find is what people are really looking for is uniqueness. They want something special. And of course, by its very nature, if it's unique, it might be hard to find because it is the one of its kind, or it's a special solution that you might need to dig deeper to identify. And then they look into the team. So for example, their experience, how much you can, again, highlighting the point of trust, how much you can trust this team, who are they actually that this solution comes from, and then looking at the potential impact. So it is luckily, happily, a factor that corporates are looking into these days is how much impact can this have, either financial, non-financial, or on other KPIs that they have about environmental impacts and factors like this. And as you've mentioned, geographical proximity, at least from our data, it's the bottom of the list. So luckily, it seems not to be the most major concern, at least for those who took part in our research, how close they are. But it's a different question of, would I be willing to work with a startup that's based halfway across the world? And can I find them? Do I have an inroad to connect with them? Do I have a local partner who can tell me who's working in North America if I'm based here in Austria, or if I, just would be open to things? How do I start can also be a question. How do I even know what's happening in those other markets if I'm based here in my own spot? So it might not be that they're so worried, but it could be just that they just don't know where to start. And the same for stage. It can even be a relatively low importance. But interestingly, if you read the full report, you'll see as well, depending on what the collaboration is for, this factor actually changes in importance, the stage and the type of startup that corporates are looking for. So if you're collaborating on something related to your technical core, for example, you might place some factors higher than if you're collaborating on factors related to your marketing efforts and your portfolio of products. Maybe Ruth has some perspectives as well from her own scouting efforts.
Right. So Mats, you've mentioned falling in love with the startup. I think this happens, but typically what is even more effective is if you know what you're looking for. So falling in love with some of the pain points that happen internally, and how are you going to solve those, and try to connect that. So this product uniqueness for me, it's more, and I mean, I have to say also, right? I mean, we're in insurance space, we're working mainly with B2B solutions, and we're co-developing some of the solutions in order to open up as well with, some of our key assets, right? Like, typically when the startups come to us or we reach out to them, I mean, the proposition here is really market, right? To have the possibility to commercialize a solution together with Generali. So I'd say that, like identifying these pain points or like those areas that have the greatest potential, it's probably one of the key points. In terms of maturity, I would say out of our experience, we have very good experience working with, like I would say the sweet spot is Series A. If you look at the, the rounding, the funding rounds for a startup, so pre-Series A. That's where there is already a market, a product fit, and then they're looking for reaching out to market, and there is where we can really develop these collaborations. We've done also more earlier stages, and then it's more like the discovery piece, right? Like this kind of uniqueness, new technologies that's then more relevant. But then I would say also proximity plays a role, because when you're starting working together, somehow, it's this trust development, it's easier if there is, some connection points. And I'm not sure, I'm not talking anymore about, like physical connection only. I mean, we're working with a garage sometimes, like some of the sprints and everything happens in-house. But of course, coming out of a period where everything happens virtual, it's not only like the most essential piece, but maybe more on the market side, understanding the markets, or understanding as well which are like the limitations for working with specific startup, that it's maybe not into the same market. It can be an IT security requirement issue, data protection. Those are like the topics that for us are creating some challenges.
Maz, if that answers your question here, I might open up also to yourself or to anyone else here who wants to share from their own scouting experiences. What is the most difficult to find, or is there anything that you feel in your own experience is really tough? It's holding back the solutions that you're finding from being the right one for you.
Siobhan had a question. She was interested on your perspective on challenges from the startup side, rather versus the corporate side. What challenges are startups finding?
So for startups, it's very interesting because what they report is what I would say a leaking funnel. So they approach it, of course, from a B2B sales angle of trying to find the partner just for this specific type of partnership. And what they've indicated is that as much as 90%, and in fact, maybe more of their collaborations fall out of the pipeline before they reach scale deployment. And actually, in our own perspective, we believe that might be too many, this 10 to 11%, that might be overstating how many actually make it because of how you consider when a first introduction starts, depending on how you're sending things out. So they have a hard time ensuring that they're investing their efforts in the opportunities that will be a joint synergy for all parties, and ensuring that they can get through the corporate processes that can be a little bit more challenging for a younger company, especially if they don't have the collaboration experience. They don't know to expect what role procurement is going to play, for example. So they are caught unaware when they get there, for example. So these kind of factors can really play into a lot of risk on the startup side, in fact, because what happens if you as a startup partner or spend a lot of time trying to partner with these 90% who end up falling out of the pipeline is that you as a startup only have so much funding. And we see actually a lot of pressure on this these days. If you've seen the massive fall in 2022 relative to 2021 and continuing into Q1 this year in VC funding, a corporate partnership can make or break these days for a startup. And so you have to find the right partnership and really validate who is ready to work with you and who has a pain point that you really meet. So understanding not only your partners, but also yourself and where you fit in the market.
Siobhan, did that address your question? Perfect.
But it's very interesting perspective. So feel free to look into it. Also in the report itself, we explore a lot the ways that they're approaching partners and how to optimize that as well. Fantastic. So just looking, I guess, at the time, I think it would be great to jump into a little bit what's at stake in these partnerships, and then we can come back, of course, in Q&A if this is interesting still. So why does it matter that we get past these challenges? I think you all know, if you measure it, you will see there is a lot of impact coming from these collaborations. So many of the corporates we spoke to don't have a clear mechanism for tracking the impact of these collaborations. They don't have a consistent way of measuring these collaborations. And I say yet, because I do believe that they will learn from those successful collaborators who are doing so. But even if they don't yet have a grasp on how much impact is being derived, many of them still report that there is at least some. So 45% of corporates told us that at least 3% of their annual profits or revenues are being directly impacted by CorpUp, which is a huge amount if you think how much revenue 10,000 employee corporate would be generating in a given year. And not only is it very strong these days, but in fact, it will grow. So the vast majority of collaborators reported that this is on a growth trajectory. In fact, only 2% told us that they think it will go down. I don't know why. I didn't personally get the chance to talk to anyone who said it was going to decrease, but the vast majority do see it as on a growth path. So if you can manage to measure, you can really track that growth over the next 3 years. And we tend to do these reports every 3 years. So maybe we'll talk to you around that time and hear the development that you saw in your own collaboration impact. But to get to this point where you understand, you have to, of course, really be measuring that impact. And that's where I really want to pass over, especially to Ruth, to share, because we've highlighted a few very strong collaborators in our report, including Verizon, Generali, Sparkasse, and DTEC from Ukraine. So also wanted to share a breadth of industries here. And Ruth's perspective really stood out in terms of how they're measuring this impact. So Ruth, maybe you can share a little more. Right.
And maybe to start with on the structure, since that's the way it's been really like profiled here in this analysis. But so we are actually we spin off the House of Insurtech Switzerland from the internal innovation team. And created this core pop studio about 3.5 years ago. So we're still quite young, but I think if we look at the overall history of STAR collaborations, I think we started really like in the core and in the hot spot on when things and collaborations were being crafted. We took this decision of spinning off the organization, and so what it brings to that is there is like a well-structured way on how we approach startups and what's really like our governance and mechanism to really track the success that is being created. So in terms of involvement, so we have a board of directors, which is consolidated by different C-level managers from Generali in 3 different entities. So we have, of course, strong focus in Switzerland, since that's where we're based and where we started, and it's basically on the shareholder level structure. It's also where the ownership lies. So the chairman of the House of Insurtech is also the CEO of Switzerland. Then we have representatives from the group, Chief Digital Officer, Group Innovation Management, as well as right now consolidating more a business unit at regional level, DACH, and also the Chief Transformation Officer is part of it. So this is like the way we make sure that the executive level is involved. We have a board, we're reporting, and we're really also kind of defining a strategy together. Then how are business units involved? Maybe that's also like an interesting piece. I think in one hand, we're lifting and we're really building the organization with an approach that it's been very much managed by the group innovation team. We have a methodology that we are really like, cascading throughout the organization. And that's very useful and very essential, so that the people that are from the different units collaborating with us, they know as well how to run those innovation processes. Sometimes it's quite different from the way, the business as usual it's running. So, and it's anyway like an interesting approach on how to become agile and how to work more, as a startup. And it creates a lot of, benefits as well on how this agility is brought into the organization. The way we're prioritizing the different initiatives, we're having so this innovation circle in which we're having representatives from different areas. So be it like product, but also sales, distribution, marketing, and customers. So they're all part of this circle. And we're taking decisions on which type of initiatives we're prioritizing and how is that impacting the whole budget for allocating to those core partnerships. So that's more like from the structural piece. I don't know if there are some questions there already at this point. If not, I think I'm going to continue then on the impact side. So we realized that there was a lot of traction. We were kind of getting quite along with multiple POCs and exploration. I think that the important part is also like how they transition to the next level from the funnel. And so there are different things that we're measuring. So from and they differ throughout the funnel, the different time of a funnel. So we start with ideation, or even like in the pre-ideation phase. Of course, there is more about topics which are like, how to connect current pain points from the organization, how to understand strategic topics and connect to the type of startups that might be relevant addressing those together. And there, in terms of measurement, we're looking at mainly more like very high level of, it could be total addressable market, or it could be any other type of more market-oriented figures that might also give an order of magnitude of the potential of this collaboration. When we're going farther along the line of POC, there we're very focused on metrics, and then this desirability and feasibility plays a lot of a strong role there. So we're checking with the customers if in those kind of POCs, we're having like different KPIs on how this specific prototype is delivering to those. And it could be, once more, if there is enough desirability from the customer perspective. We're also doing some other exercises to open up and test, if you're in innovation, you know them all, right, on how these kind of growth hacks are functioning. And then feasibility, which is, once more, we're an insurance company. There are lots of processes already in place. There is, a strong regulation requirements, etc. And so the feasibility, it is for us as well, quite important component. So IT security, data protection, and all these things. Going back more into MVP, and even like before it gets to the market, then we're going to go and kind of measure more on a project basis, like business case related. And overall, if you look at the whole portfolio, we're tracking numbers, also like the outputs of this process, because I think, it's about managing it. But then we've created a business, so a value framework in order to identify the return of investment for the activities that we're doing. And one important piece, and it's here in the financial metrics, right? We're looking at the return of investment over a period of time of 5 to 7 years. And this is something that I don't know how it is in the different corporate organizations that are here in the room, but the tendency is we want to see results earlier, and we want to see, higher level of return. I think that it's a challenging one for innovation, because it's relying on value, and I think those are, depends on which type of horizon the innovation horizons, right? Like the framework of, are you focusing more on activities that are core business and it's more incremental improvement, or are you focusing more on the disruption and different business models that are new? So we try to have a strong focus on the horizon 2, which is in the middle, so which are adjacent technology, something that it's contributing to core but not core, so more on the adjacent piece, and therefore it takes a bit longer in order to materialize those all those aspects.
Ruth, Siobhan had a question about decision making. Siobhan, did you want to come on and ask that question? Oh, it looks like her mic's not connecting, but she had asked that you mentioned that there were different C-suite members on the team in the decision-making process. She asked, who is the final decision maker commonly, if there is one?
We need to identify, we need to distinct between different type of decisions that are being taken. So I'm talking here in the C involvement to be a strategic decision-making body, right? Those are like board of directors members. So it's less on identifying, being deciding on which type of activities are we going to push through the funnel. This is more at the level of this innovation circle, which are, I'd say it's C-1, C-2. And the question is, who is the final decision maker? And this is, final decision maker, I don't know exactly if you are talking about a specific initiative. I think what we do is we have periodic reviews of the different activities that are in the funnel, and we take common decisions. It's not only like one single decision maker. As I said, it's like a board. It's part of the governance. At the end of the day, to be very honest, if we were really in the more heuristic way on how to take decisions, it should be data driven. It's sometimes a challenge, right, on how you take your bets as well in a very early stages. But that's essentially, the decisions will be driven by all these factors. So desirability, feasibility, and at the end of the day, also viability. So how big is the potential?
Great. Thanks, Ruth. We just 3 minutes to go. So as Rebecca continues on, there was a question about how to get your hands on the report and download it. And so Rebecca kindly dropped a link into the chat. So while we're still online here, just wanted to let everyone know that it's there for you.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. And if you have questions as you read the whole report, my information is also in the report if you want to reach out to ask. Just in the very final minute, let's say, of having this on screen, I wanted to share the overall conclusion from this maybe complex looking chart, but to simplify, there's a number of processes that we asked the corporate respondents if they have them in place, different factors that we find can enhance the likelihood of success. And depending on whether a corporate was successful, according to their own reporting in their corp up collaborations, or unsuccessful, we see a vast difference in how likely they were to have these processes in place. So the main takeaway here is that the effort that you put in to make these collaborations work, to work with this kind of peculiar, different type of partner, pays off. Putting these processes in place really pays off, and implementing these factors, some of which Ruth was describing in the example of Generali, can really make a difference for your own collaborations and their success. So hope that the insights are useful for your own collaborations. Sincerely believe that they can support your efforts in working with startups.
Great. Wonderful session, Rebecca and Ruth. Really appreciate the time and the insights. There's a lot of new information here in the report, and I hope everyone gets a chance to download it. And thanks everyone for our participants for joining us today. You can share your learnings via the survey in the chat box, which I think was just dropped in there. And we hope to see you again at future learning labs.
Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you also.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks.